Justin Odisho runs a YouTube channel specializing in the fields of photo and video editing. He teaches industry standard softwares such as Adobe Premiere Pro, After Effects, and Photoshop to millions of viewers around the world. Justin has also worked directly with companies such as Amazon, Adobe, GoPro, YouTube, Best Buy, and various influential individual creators. He has also spoken publicly and been featured on TEDx, TV, podcasts, classrooms, company conferences, and much more. This is Justin Odisho. Justin Odisho, welcome to the Rare Human Podcast. Thank you so much for taking the time. How are you?
Hey, Evan, I'm good. Thanks for having me on.
So we've known each other for a couple of years, and you are indeed a rare human. You've done a lot in the creator space. You're a video editor, but you've also given back a lot to, your own niche community, and that's like video editors alike. I mean, I've benefited a lot from your work and your tutorials and your products and all that stuff. So I'm super stoked to have you on and chat about these things that you've been doing over the years. I mean, you've been at it for a long time. How long have you had your YouTube channel?
Yeah, I've started this channel, which is just my name, Justin Odisho. It wasn't always my name, but I've had this since 2011, I believe. But I've been doing video stuff and posting online since like 2007 or something like that.
Wow. So you've
So
been
it's been
at
a long time.
it. You've been at it for a while. I mean, you were in the earlier stages of YouTube. One of the things I wanted to talk about, were those early stages, like the early beginnings of Justin Odisho. What led you to video editing? What led you to YouTube, and wanting to eventually give back to a community? I mean, you're almost at, what is it, 1 million subscribers on YouTube.
Yeah, I think I'm a little shy right now, but it'll be there soon. It's like 980.
I love it.
And
That's a huge, huge, huge accomplishment for YouTube.
and actually the funny part is I've actually already gotten 1 million subscribers, but the thing is like for every 10 you gain, you lose like one or two. So if you go to your YouTube analytics, it'll say like subscribers gained and subscribers lost.
Mm.
So technically I've already gained it, but then I've lost like 100,000 or something.
Well, anyone that unsubscribed, go subscribe again, because we need that million. Well,
Yeah,
that's
it's
cool.
just like a milestone number, but really what's more important is just being able to reach viewers and get viewers. So, and I think that's something that shifted from early days of YouTube to now is now, I mean, it doesn't really matter how many subscribers you have necessarily, as long as, I mean, because now everything's homepage recommended and search. And so you could start a brand new channel, and as long as it gets sent to the right recommended pages, you know. Also, I really like the Still Human logo. I'm just looking around at the screen here. That's a nice logo.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, it's going to be a lot of peeling back the layers of finding out what Still Human is. Like at the core of it, at the heart of it, it's an educational platform. Meaning, like, how like a lot of kids growing up, they're like, oh, why didn't we learn that in school, or why didn't they teach that in school? It's like, okay, well, maybe you'll have Still Human, like a platform B. You can go onto the website or have in-person events. That, like, on the Still Human website, there's a theater mode, and I've curated like 6 different playlists ranging from historical research to scientific research, astronomy, biological stuff, like anything related to the human experience. I want it to I want people to go on there and educate themselves and have this platform to just like learn about what it means to live through the human experience. Because I think that sometimes it's easy to get detached from that and distracted, and especially in the modern world with social media and content and all these dopamine hits that we're constantly getting. It's like, I feel like humans constantly need that reminder that, like, this is your experience. We have a limited time here. You never know when that time is going to be up. So you might as well use this time to live to your full potential. And it's just kind of a play at the word too, like, or the name, Still Human. One of the first things I did at Camp Flognaw when I shot photography back in 2017 was all the other photographers backstage were just doing regular portraits of the artists. and I wanted to do something different. I'm like, well, I'm back here. I'm not really supposed to be back here. I snuck in. How can I use this time to do something different and creative? And that's when I came up with the idea for the artists to look down at their hands and give me a facial expression. And when I got the film back and got it developed, I went back to my computer and I was like, oh, this is interesting. What should I name this? And I'm like, well, they're looking at their hands. They're still human. Like the idea was like they go beyond just the celebrity status, people out there that are idolizing them or that when they see them, they freak out, whatever. It's like, no, at the end of the day, they have hands. They're still human. They have feelings like us. They have thoughts just like us. They make mistakes just like us. Like they're not perfect. It's kind of like that shock that you get when like somebody comes in the news, similar to Kanye, like all the controversy that's surrounded Kanye. Everyone was like, oh my God, how could he? He's this like genius. He created this. He did this. Like, no, he's still human. Humans are flawed. They make mistakes, some bigger than others. And so the kind of the concept was that, we're all still human. Let's learn together. Let's grow together. And let's better the human experience for ourselves. So that's kind of the explanation of still human.
Yeah, no, I'm with you definitely on the like changing education. I also just want to use my channel in any way possible to overthrow the traditional education system.
Totally. And one of the things too is whenever I, needed assistance on an edit or I needed to learn how to do some trick or something that I always knew Justin Odisho probably knows how to do this. So I'd go on and you would always be the first person that showed up on the YouTube search. And I'd always watch your videos early on in my editing career. And one of the things that I always noticed is like every video that you posted, there'd be 2 or 3 top comments with like a bunch of upvotes of people saying, Justin, like if it wasn't for you, I'm an editor now. I am getting paid. Like I'm doing all these things. Like thank you, Justin. And that's the great thing about giving back to your community and educating people. Like you have the knowledge, you have that power, like you have the ability to do those things that others aren't really known to yet. And so by you openly, freely giving that back to the people, you're just building upon that knowledge. Like you're giving it back. You're not hoarding it. You're not saying like this is mine.
Yeah.
Like I'm the best editor, only I can do this. Like for you to give back and help people, guide them through that experience of becoming a video editor and a creator in general, that's the impact that it can have. So like I said, whenever I go onto your videos to learn something new, I'd always see those top comments be people thanking you for taking the time and energy to give back. So that's the great thing about education and being a teacher too, is that simple fact that like you're going to be inspiring people daily, and that's the beauty in it. So
yeah. And really it's not even such a selfless thing. It just happens to work that when you help others, it somehow comes back around and helps yourself. So I couldn't think of any other better way to really, I don't know how else such a sort of business or lifestyle would be sustainable if it weren't for just like help as many people as you possibly can, and then maybe you'll be able to make something out of it. Because I'm not like the greatest editor there ever was in crazy VFX or something to be making it that way. So, but I am very helpful. So I guess I've people are like, hey, you can stick around.
Yeah, we love the content.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, like we talked about a couple minutes ago, you amassed a large following, and before all that, I want to back up to your early days growing up, your childhood. Like, what led you? Like, have you read the book Mastery by Robert Greene?
Is that the small one? It's like a small square. There's
No,
two. Oh, no, not the one. The guy that wrote the 48 Laws of Power.
oh yeah, that one.
Is that the guy that wrote that?
Yep.
No, I read the other Mastery. There's like another one. It's older. It's like,
Oh, really?
yeah, I think it's called Mastery, and it's like 7 steps to mastering anything. And
Oh, cool.
he compares it to
I
like
gotta
some sort of
check.
Taekwondo or something. I read it a long time ago. I read that one. I haven't read the Robert Greene books for me, or they're so big. They're
They
like,
are, but they are big.
he always just is like, here's 50 examples of mastery and 50 anecdotes, but what about it?
So the reason I bring that book up is the first few chapters he talks about all these iconic people like the Edisons and the um, who's the guy that founded the theory of evolution?
Darwin?
Darwin.
Wait,
Yes, thank
is
you.
that it?
Uh, Darwin. So he the reason I bring this up is because he talks about the early childhood upbringing of these people and what led them to finding their truth and their, like revolutionizing the world. And it always started or stemmed from like this one moment that inspired them in some field or another. For example, Darwin was, I'd have to go fact check myself, but I'll just say what I think because it's been a while since I read the book. But he like his dad made him take a job on like a boat when he was like a teenager to like make money, and it was like a fishing boat, and the fishing boat went out for weeks or months at a time. And during his free time, back when they didn't have TikTok and all those distractions and such, he would rest his head on the end of the boat and look out and see all the marine life and see all the different microbes and fishes and dolphins, whatever. And he would just study them, and he'd become fascinated with them and eventually obsessed with them. And that's what led him to, when he'd come off the boat, study, marine biology and all these different things, and just biology in general. And that's what led him to going to the islands and discovering, what would eventually lead him to the theory of evolution. So, like for me, for example, what led me into filmmaking, when I think I was in like fourth or fifth grade, I had a neighbor of mine who his mom had this like Canon camera that was really old school, like the really thin camera that you'd turn on and like the lens would pop out,
Mm-hmm.
shot in like 480p. And we would make these like zombie horror films, like really cheesy, like films. And it was just like, it was fun because we were writing these corny, cheesy stories and putting them into like Windows Movie Maker and editing these cheesy horror zombie films. And it kind of like inspired what eventually led me to go down the path of like, you know, wanting to go to film school, video editing. Then that my love and passion for music led me to working in the music space. So like what was your, early Justin Odisho moment? Like, do you have anything specifically that you're like, wow, that's what led me to eventually become a video editor?
Yeah, actually, the way that I take your the way that I think about what you just said is it's to me it's like we're thrown into a certain like context of life. So whether that's like the time that you're born, the family you're born into, like you said, what technology is around when you're born, and also just like where you're born, whether you're born somewhere where you can play around with cameras, or maybe you're born like on some island, or maybe you're born somewhere else. So I think largely that is going to influence what you end up doing, as well as maybe a mix of your natural inclinations. But for me, I happen to be born, in the 90s when the internet and all this stuff is coming up. Um, and video games and all this stuff and online websites and forums are just beginning to be a thing. So I was always exposed to computers, and my brother actually had gotten, I think it was After Effects or Photoshop, and when we were playing all these games, because whatever, we're like young kids and we love Xbox games and stuff. And around the websites and communities and forums of these games, like people also like to make little graphics, and like something about that intrigued me, like making some cool animated fireball in After Effects or something. And from there, I learned Photoshop and After Effects, and I actually learned Sony Vegas. And I just sort of, I liked video editing in that sense, but I've always been drawn to, I don't know if you could say mathematical things. I don't know if, I guess video editing is very mathematical. But yeah, I've always liked like keyboard or guitar or like things to have to do with organizing in some way. So I just happened to be near computers, I think, and yeah, that was like the spark. So it wasn't like one day or one specific moment, but more
Yeah,
like a time, yeah, and place.
I think it's cool to be able to say that we kind of grew up when computers became commercialized because it was just like this new world that we were all collectively discovering. And I think I have a pretty distant memory of when I was actually like in like first grade when they had like computer lab, and you'd go to computer lab like once a week or whatever it was. And back, especially in the schools where software was very limited, they were restricted to, so you couldn't go on like Google or Reddit or download some like link to download a software. It was just what was presented to you, and it was like this new world to discover. And so every time going into computer lab, there was like three programs. There was like a drawing program, and then there was like GarageBand and iMovie. It was like a very distant, like back when that was just like very fresh and raw. And it was just cool to be able to digitally manipulate sound and video. And, they had those, remember those like old Snowball microphones? I forget I don't know if they were called that. Let me see if I
Kind
can.
of.
Snowball.
But you're bringing back more. If I
Oh,
could say the
I
Blue
found it.
Yeti, if
Blue
I could,
Snowball.
yeah, if I could add one moment in specific when I like saw some cool video editing thing, I think we must have been in like fourth grade or something, and we had a class project to make some slideshow, and it was done in one of these programs. I don't know. They didn't have Excel. Oh, what did they have back then? I don't know. Some PowerPoint type of program. And I remember one of my classmates' presentations, their group had done a PowerPoint where they had animated like the game Duck Hunt, like when a bird flies and then falls.
Mm.
And- But because the program was sort of so primitive, they did it in an interesting way where they did two separate animations, but it just so happened to seem like they were interacting with each other. And
Oh, I love that.
that like blew my fourth grade mind for some reason.
I love that. Yeah, see that's the beauty in education is and it even goes back to the idea of like still human, and like what we were discussing earlier about education is like everything starts with like curiosity. Like humans are naturally curious. Like if it wasn't for that curiosity, we wouldn't be throwing ships up into the air and spaceships and flying, like building the International Space Station and fusing neurons together. Like all this crazy stuff is like stems from the natural innate ability in humans to like be curious and like, can we achieve this? Can we go further? And I think that as young kids, that's like your imagination is like running crazy. We believe in Santa Claus. Our pet stuffed animals are come alive at night, and we're having imaginary tea parties and all these things. Like kids are so pure in the sense that like the world is our oyster. And I think in education, having those computer labs and like you were discussing, having access to those programs, it's just like it allows the young brain to chase that curiosity, and which even will lead to, you know, when we become adults or whatever, like that's usually where our path leads from when we were inspired early on as kids. So yeah, I think that I'm curious as to like if those kids today in school are getting those same experiences. I'm not sure. I have cousins that have kids in school. Maybe I can ask them, but
See, this is a whole different topic. To me, okay, kids are actually really smart and capable, and I've learned this because I've been like really into chess lately, and so I go to these chess clubs, and there's like tons of kids there, and when's the last time I've interacted with like an 8-year-old? It's been a long time, aside from like family and cousins. So I don't really like remember. I haven't really like gauged where's your average 9-year-old now, but some
it
of
sounds like
these
a show
kids,
idea. Where's your average 9-year-old? On
some
today's
of these
episode.
some of these kids are actually super smart and they're super good at this like logical mathematical game. And so maybe like they're still little kids and they're still running around and stuff. But as someone who knows what's going on in their head, then I think, oh, that like if they're playing at this level, that means that in their head they're doing this and XYZ logical step and they're doing this mathematical thing. And I'm like, wow, that's actually really impressive for like someone at 9. And so bringing that into the education system, I don't necessarily have a problem so much with like younger education because they get to interact with each other and whatnot. There's probably still a lot of problems with it, but I think more so is like with all the resources that we have now, um, the idea of like even once you get to 18 and older and going to college, like university and college and spending so much money and 4 years, 5 years, 6 years more, like what are you really getting anymore at that point, especially when you have everything at your fingertips and your phone or whatever. And people really underestimate this or make it seem like a meme or something, but like you really it's I mean, the internet is so new. YouTube has only been since like 2006. I mean, things have changed, but yet the university system hasn't really changed. And I don't know. I do think that there's a there's room there, definitely. I mean, you just have to take into consideration that things have changed, and people just don't seem to want to admit that, or they just still want to see it as like it's just the internet. It's just the internet. We still have to go sit in. What do you mean you don't have a degree? You still have to go get your degree. When in reality, like a 14-year-old kid could, this is such a cliche meme, but a 14-year-old kid could learn how to code just as well as anyone working at Google or something. Why waste 10 years of their life?
Absolutely. And I'm not taking away from anyone that works at Google, but there's a lot of memes right now going around where it's like the day in the life of like working at Google and they like work for like 30 minutes and then the rest is like
Yeah.
bullshitting around. So yeah, you're exactly right. I mean, there is no strict formula. I think like defying the status quo can almost be like make you seem like rebellious. You're like, what? You're going to risk not spending $100,000 for over 4 years to get a degree, whatever. And that's totally fine. I mean, if you want to take that route, more power to you. But to go to your point, like, I went to film school for a year and did not enjoy it. I didn't think I was getting any value from it. And a friend of mine I moved to LA and ended up getting jobs in the esports industry and everything went perfectly fine. It's like there is no strict, obviously granted, like if you're going to become a doctor, yeah, I don't want you
Mhm.
operating on me if you,
I
you
learned it
know,
on YouTube.
yeah. Hey, I hope this goes well. I watched a lot of YouTube last night about, so totally, that's a little freaky. But yeah, I totally agree. I think that there needs some reform in that area. And if you can, like there are code camps, there's different platforms and ways of becoming educated in certain areas. And YouTube is amazing. I always say like I owe all my education to YouTube. I owe all my networking and relationships to Instagram DMs. Like the internet is such a powerful tool and it's only going to become more powerful. And you just have to find ways to leverage it and benefit from it, so that you can, you know, plant the seeds that you need to plant and take from it what you want to take.
And I'll just also say, and just books. Like, what
Yes.
what magical knowledge are you really getting from going onto a campus and being in a classroom and having a teacher? I mean, okay, I'm not going to take away a teacher's value, but there's no magical osmosis that happens. Usually, they're assigning you a book along with lectures or homework or whatever, or making you watch something online anyway. But in reality, whether you pay tuition and sit in a class and have peers and classmates, if I read, you know, let's just say Homer, some classic book, and you read Homer, we're both reading Homer. And whether you paid tuition or not, I don't see how you're magically going to learn more than if I just read it. And so, I mean, one thing that's great is libraries or even like campus libraries. They have everything in there, but it's like a lot of it probably collects dust. Um,
Yeah.
so, but I don't see anything stopping anyone if they wanted to from just going to their library and educating themselves. As long as that's where, like, the basic education when you're younger, you know how to read, write, these things. Why does it have to take, I mean, how long, like from the time you're in first grade to college? Like, why does it have to take 20 years? Like, why can't you just do it all in 5 years? I don't know.
Well, I think there's let's see. Let me look it up to make sure. Even like the founding fathers of our country, I think
Let's go deep.
yeah, let's go deep. How old were the founding fathers of my son? Okay, so
Oh yeah, they were young, huh?
they were super young. They were like 35 or younger. 33. Okay, Thomas Jefferson was 33. Um, ages of the James Madison was 25. Yeah, like 21, 18, 33. So you're exactly right. I mean, at that time, there was no system, right? There was no, like, these guys were probably doing shit when they were like 12 or 13. And there was no like, Thomas Jefferson is in school to learn how, it's like it was very much so this like free flowing state of learning. And, obviously we weren't around, so we don't know for sure. But I think like you said, what limits so much growth and acceleration of that growth, like you said, is like that having this like system that you have to abide by, and oh, you're 13, you should be throwing football at the park and all. It's like, no, if you want to, like, I have on my mom's side, one of her sisters has a kid, autistic son, and this was like 5 years ago. I forget exactly how old he was. Very young. He was like probably 12 or 13. And he brought this like iPad to Christmas. And he's just like glued to the screen the whole time. And so I finally go up to him. I'm like, hey, what are you working on? And like autistic kids are like extremely smart. Like their social skills are limited, but their brains are just like firing on all cylinders, like extremely smart. And I go up to him and I'm like, hey, what are you working on? And he's in Minecraft. And he's like super young, like he's very young. I think I played Minecraft when I was like 16 or 15 or 16, but he was like 10, 11, whatever it was. And he immediately just like starts going off about all these intricate cities that he built in Minecraft, and he built these boats, and he built this house for himself, and I was like, dude, this is incredible. Like, this is insanely, like, it's very detailed. He has a plan for it all, like a purpose for what he's building, for what he's doing, and he's just like running me through this like insanely intricate city in Minecraft. And his mom was like, oh yeah, I know, it's cute, right? But I'm like, for me, I'm like, this is like he's got to be an engineer or something. Like, this is incredible. And he was super young. And it just goes to the point that you made, where like there is no age restriction when you can like be a genius, like, or the formation of that genius mentality. And that just like blew my mind. Like when I saw him doing that, everyone else is like BSing around. It's like the typical Christmas, like, oh, what'd you bring? What are you eating? How you been?
Yeah.
And here he is, like over in the corner, like building this like elaborate city in Minecraft. Like, that to me was incredible. And so yeah, I just feel like we need more of that, like that level. I don't know, just like allowing kids to use their massive amount of imagination and creativity to build these systems and stuff. It was cool to see.
Put the kids back in labor camps. No.
Yeah.
Like those pictures on Twitter of like the 3-year-old bricklayer.
Yeah, yes.
They used to send kids to work at 3.
Yeah,
Now
and
we baby them.
I know.
No,
Damn
but
it.
I
Get your ass
do.
to work.
No, I do think we underestimate kids, or at least I used to. I mean, they may not be there mature and socially wise, but they definitely can. They can work.
Well, what scares me
they can do
is
math.
totally. And what scares me is, like, I don't mean to sound like a typical boomer, but like, all these, like, back then, like, kids would like go into like extracurricular activities and form book clubs or form science clubs or whatever it is. Now it's all like content driven, and they're like, we want to be influencers, and
Yeah.
here's like a fighting video. Here's like a video of like Jimmy and George getting into a fist fight. Like obviously that's been around for years,
Yeah.
even before content. But I worry. I don't know. Maybe I shouldn't worry. I have hope. But whenever I see that stuff, I'm just like, fuck, man. Like, stay focused. Like, you know, kids would rather, you know, absorb
Watch
this.
TikTok.
Yeah, watch this like brutal, stupid TikTok content than like watch a SpaceX rocket booster land on a pad, you know. And I'm not trying to say like all kids should be forced to be curious about these things, but I just wish there was some um reverse manipulation to get kids inspired into, like, I always tell people, you know how like there's all these conspiracy theories about like, oh, they're brainwashing people and this and MK Ultra. I'm like, okay, well, if that stuff works, why don't we take that, give it to people that can use it for good, and instead of inspire people to do shitty things and horrible things, how about we use those brainwashing tactics to get kids to be inspired and do good things? Like, I don't
No, the
know.
shadowy figures don't want that.
I know the lizard
No.
people.
No, but I think you're making a lot of good points. For one, like one thing is, like you said, it's something new. Like new technology can be useful, like video games. A lot of times you can think of them as destructive, like just Grand Theft Auto, violence, whatever. But there can also be like educational aspects to things like Minecraft. Um, I think like in some doses it can be a good supplement. And and I also think like, yeah, nowadays kids have probably a lot more distractions or vices like awaiting them, because basically like you really have to fight for your attention now, because I mean even us, not just kids, but like to the ability to be able to pay attention in today's time is, and just like how rare is it to just sit and study something or even read a book for like 1 hour, when most of the time you can just be like scrolling TikTok, or like here's 5 seconds here, 5 seconds here, 5 seconds here, listen to music, must like consuming like 10 different forms of content at the
Mm-hmm.
same time. And I've done this too,
Oh yeah,
like,
we
and
all
just how
fall
many
victim to
times.
it.
But I think like if you are able to have some discipline, and I see small bits of this sort of counterculture of like people anti social media, or like turning like, I think there's still people that want to that recognize this. And I just think if you're able to avoid becoming like a TikTok zombie, then you could still, you probably even have even more of an advantage in today's time, because everyone else is just going to be on TikTok.
That's honestly, I'm so glad that you bring that point in there at the end about having more of an advantage, because if you think about it, so many people are like, oh my God, there's all these creators and there's all these people. Everything is like, even in music, like everything is so um saturated, and like, how do I break, or how do I do this? And really, like, it's almost like the opposite. It's like, no, you actually have an advantage if you understand it correctly, because all these people are just either distracted or they're going off of trends or going off of that. But like all the greats, like all the previous great people, like were not distracted. Like they were so in their own element. And so, yeah, like they were not distracted. So, like, to go off your point, like all you have to really do is like, don't fall victim to that distraction game or those quick dopamine hits, like the casino of content. Just stay true to you. Read books to become inspired and influenced by people that have come before you. And like every time I open up like a coffee table read of like Virgil or even some like museum book or whatever, it's just like you instantly get that like almost that calm meditative state of like, oh man, this is nice, this is calm, this is peaceful, this is inspiring, this is beautiful, versus like TikTok where it's like me and this, me and that, like, oh my God, like it's almost like a nightmare. You're just like, holy shit, like what is going on? Like, oh my God. It's like a battlefield of like attention spans.
Yeah. And
Um,
and I'm and here we are contributing to it. And here I am posting shorts on my YouTube channel. It's like,
yeah, well, I know
what
it's
do
like
you do? You can't escape it.
finding that mixture of like I don't know because yeah, like as a creator, you want to stay up to date with like how people are consuming content, but also you have to draw a line of like where you won't like what you won't go past. You know, like you're like, oh, I'm not
Yeah.
going to do that. But there was a funny. Let me see if I can find it. It was like a TikTok first day back at school TikTok. Um, I don't want to
Oh,
waste too much time trying to find it,
well,
but
you could
they,
always cut it.
yeah, I can always, yeah, exactly. Let me see if I can find this. I don't probably, there's probably way too many, but I saw it like when the kids were starting to go back to school. There was like this meme of, like your first day back in the hallways, and it was just all these different memes that had like been famous throughout the year, and all the kids are like dressing up as them and all this. And you know that guy that's like a famous meme from that he's like a superhero that like kills everyone with his eyes or whatever. What's that movie that just was like super popular? But they memed his
I don't
face a
know.
bunch, and he was like looking around the hallways like, what the like, I'll find it to you and send it to you later, but
Yeah.
it's hilarious because it just like plays on like the current landscape of like all these meme trends and how everyone goes back to school and they're like doing pranks in the hallways on each other and they're making viral meme TikToks. And like here this guy is just like trying to go to class and he's looking around like, oh my God.
Yeah. Or I saw a funny one of like the street interviewer people. They're like, "How much do you make?" Or like, "Can I?"
Yeah,
And this guy was like, "Come with me," and they were like trying to get away from all these street interviewer people. That was a funny one. Um,
totally. Which is
but
interesting because it's like an extension, like even though TikTok amplifies it and content and views amplify it, it's still an extension of what has happened in the past because there's this book called Psychomagic. Let me see who it was. Alejandro Jardinsky, I think, is the guy that authored it. And he grew up in France back in like the early 1900s, and he did street performances. This is well before people were filming things for views. This was just for the sake of like trolling people. Like he was one of the original trolls. Like he would go to the town square with three of his buddies and like fuck with people. Like no cameras, no views, no anything. They were literally just doing it as almost like their own social experiments. And you know, they would go out and like scream random things and like do all these things to get a reaction from like the town people, and they would go home and journal it and be like, oh my god, this was hilarious, like this was super, it was almost like a form of like theater in real life. Like instead of people paying for a ticket to go into a theater and getting a performance, like you're like these poor people would just be walking to like a bakery or walking to work, and here these guys are like screaming with like paint on their face and like trolling people. Like they were the original trolls. And so like it's interesting because it's, you know, obviously now it's amplified because people want views and people want it's like a popularity contest in a way. But still at the core, it's like messing with people in real life. It's like a form of theater, um, which personally I enjoy. Sometimes it can be a bit much and be a little like disruptive to the environments that they're in. But yeah, like people like going into a library and like doing the air horn instead of like trying to hide it. Like I've been seeing this kid do it, and the librarian will like go up to him and she'll be like, what are you doing? And he'll be like, oh, I'm just blowing this air horn. Like he's not even
yeah,
trying to cover. It's just like, you know, it's
I think there's a fine line, yeah, between people who do it in an artful way or like people that are just like trying to catch a view and are just a nuisance to society.
exactly like you'll see comments of people saying, oh, that was hilarious, versus other people who are like, dude, this is not, like, you're being too much.
Yeah, there's definitely people that are just like, I will sacrifice these people for a view.
Yeah, exactly. And it only gets like 20 views.
Yeah.
Um,
But I
well,
think, oh,
yeah, go for it. No, go for it.
no, I was gonna say, well, you make a good point about how like in some ways people have always and are always going to be, well, we're all still human, and not even to make a joke, But
It
the point
worked. My plan worked.
at the end of the day, I mean, we're all going to have common traits, and all you have to do is actually another good point of like going back and reading some ancient Greek play or comedy. You realize people have always been jealous or angry or like trolls or whatever. Like fart humor was popular like 2000 years ago too. So that's another thing about, and I wanted to bring up this point, like going back to our education system. I don't know how old our current education system is, but another reason to question the normalcy of it is, you know, people like Plato and all these ancient mathematicians, uh, that all of everything is named after. Like even the word academy is like a Greek word. Um, you know, they figured out algorithms and math and Pythagorean theorem, and they didn't go sit in a classroom. That's another point that I always feel like, they didn't go to third grade.
Yes. There
somehow
was
they
yeah.
somehow they figured out these theorems. They were still learning. So I just think we have this totally wrong idea of what what normal is when it comes to learning and education, and I don't buy it.
Totally. And there's always theories too of like you can go far down the rabbit hole of call it a conspiracy theory or what, but even like lobbyists for back in the day when they needed workers in factories, like they would lobby for their curriculum to be taught in schools or get placed in textbooks, so that you become these nice obedient workers that don't complain and you work from 18 to 65 and you retire with a nice pension, and now once you're 65 now you can enjoy life and now you can go do your things. And now so it's like it's interesting, where it's similar. I'm sure it's similar to the US financial system as a whole, where it's just like there is no definite answer. It's just this like complex matrix of hundreds of millions of different parts that are kind of playing their own roles, probably similar to the education system where it's like it's limited to your um location, geography, where you live. Are there great educators? Are there programs? Are you rich? Are you poor? Do you have access to this? Do you have access to that? So like sure there's a lot of contributing factors, but like you said, like if there is a way to reform it as a whole, and instead of putting all this pressure on kids to learn shit that they don't want to learn, it's kind of like astronomers back in the day. Like they didn't go to astronomy school. Like they just looked up. Like they looked
Mm-hmm.
up at the sky, and when there was no light pollution, and they had this curiosity or this wonder driving through their brain, and they're like, shit, I want to learn about how that planet right there rotates around this planet. It's like it was
Mm-hmm.
all birthed, like you said, around this curiosity and this wonder. And I think that if you restrict your brain and fall into this just like system, you're never going to branch out of that. Like, were you ever inspired in fifth grade math to like accelerate mathematics or learn? You were just trying to get through the day. You're like, shit, man, I want to go home
Yeah.
and throw the football in the park with my boys or whatever. So
And it's like,
yeah,
why did they have us on such a factory schedule? You're right. Like, I don't remember what time exactly school started, but I just remember always having to wake up so early, like 7 a.m. or something. Maybe that's not early for a lot of people. I'm a night owl, definitely.
yeah,
But I don't ever have to wake up at 6, 7 a.m. much in my real life. I mean,
yeah.
take that with a grain of salt, anyone that's listening, I know. But but
Justin Odisho wakes up at 1 p.m. every morning.
but I mean, first of all, I think I disagree with that too. Like that if you wake up earlier, you're somehow more, so you've somehow made the day have more hours.
Yeah.
But I mean, there's a social aspect to it, to where like if you're living your day from like 5 o'clock to 5 in the morning, you're probably there's not gonna be a normal social. I mean, I think you should wake up when the sun comes up and go to sleep when the sun goes down. But uh yeah, I don't know. I've never had such a more rigorous waking up schedule than when I was a kid.
Oh yeah.
you
Yeah. I
know?
remember I remember waking up just like eyes crusted shut, and I'm just like, oh my God, like I had to go take the bus and I gotta go in the free. I mean, I know you grew up in a cold area too with
Mhm.
extreme climate. So yeah, waking up on those winter mornings where it's like 5 degrees and you're like, shaking on your way to the bus stop. It's like brutal. Then you go learn and become indoctrinated for the next 6 hours at school. And then you eat slop.
It's
It's
honestly, I agree with it. Call me a conspiracy theorist.
Oh, it's almost like factories. Like you're in a way, like you're just like I worked at a um how we could do this. We talk about this for hours, but even as far as going as like even like I was just talking with my girlfriend yesterday about so there's this app where you scan barcodes and it literally brings up the product and it rates it out of 100.
Mhm.
And we have Ritz crackers in the house, and I scanned it, and it was a 0 out of 100. Literally a zero nutritional value. There's additives in it, and it's a small wafer cracker, but it's got like a shit ton of calories. There's sugar in there, like all these harmful things. And when I was younger, I worked at this lumber yard, and we'd have our little break room, and it was tiny, and there was like this little tube TV, and it was just like very depressing. It's just like when you're not at work, you're still miserable, and you go in there and like the only snacks that are in there are Ritz and Cheez-Its and Diet Pepsis and Mountain Dews. So like not only are you like working for this company and ensuring that, blah, 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 being paid minimum wage, but then you're going into the break room and you're ingesting this like horrible food that's like has carcinogens in it, like red dye 40 that's known to cause cancer. Uh, I don't mean to sound too off the rails, but what I'm trying to the point.
If for 9.99, join our utopia.
Yeah, I know. Seriously, this is where we get into we're like these cult leaders that are just. Let us talk about Scientology now. No, I'm kidding. That shit freaks me out. There's a Scientology building in LA, and I refuse to drive by it because it literally gives me the creeps. Anyways, moving on.
They're gonna come after you.
Oh, I know. Seriously, this is censored now. I'm gonna be if I show up dead next Monday, Justin, just know who did it. So
No, I agree with you though. Like
yeah, it's like
everything is designed and the food pyramid and all this stuff. Okay, and you want to talk about conspiracy theory? Like, wasn't that sponsored by like
the milk industry.
whatever? No, like like corn agriculture, some sort of agriculture department. There's like you
Oh
need
yeah.
2 servings of what we produce,
Guess who
also how
lobbied?
they
Sorry, go
say
ahead.
that like well, there's like all those charts that are like ranking foods and like corn flakes or like a Fruit Loop cereal will be like higher than like
Yeah. Oh, I saw
eggs
that.
or
I saw that.
something.
And meat was at the bottom. I saw that.
It's like the most nutritious from 0 to 100 and like Fruit Loops 88, and then it'll be like something
Dude.
that people have been eating for like thousands of years. It'd be like eggs 12.
You know what's hilarious? And it's actually
I
very,
want
very
all the hate
scary.
comments.
It's insane. Like they're even saying that like if you eat meat, you're a horrible person and you're this and that. Like I'm all for people making their own choices for food, but me personally, if I don't eat meat for like a week or two, like my cognitive abilities decline.
The
Like,
older I get, I used to be scared of like pissing someone off in the comments, and like I would never even post a picture of like me eating on Instagram because I was like, someone's gonna be offended by this, and I know there's like, there's religions where they don't eat certain things, and that's I guess I understand that, but yeah,
you know what
I
my approach
agree.
is to that? If somebody is listening right now and they're feeling angry and bent up and offended, I love you. Keep being human. I love you. It's going to be okay. It's totally fine. You can have your own different beliefs. Like that's for me, like the having no fear to like have your own opinions and all that. Like obviously in a landscape like now where you can get canceled and obviously we're not out here saying like some Kanye level shit. Like it's all very like guys, this isn't rocket science. Like look at the asbestos that was found in baby powder.
Right.
Baby powder literally was like between advertisements and all these things that was used for like years. And now fast forward, like my grandparents said that the freaking like trucks full of pesticides would come drive through the neighborhood once a year and the kids would run through it like it's a fucking sprinkler.
And like Roundup and all
Yeah,
that. I
exactly.
mean,
Roundup and in this the complete takeover of agriculture is like seeds where they were suing local farmers and kicking them out of their own land so that they could mass bioengineer grain and seeds and all this shit
Yeah.
and corn and seed oils, like obesity, for example. Um, uh, Island with.
Don't get me started on this. I'm a huge conspiracy
Oh
theorist
yeah. So
on
here,
this side.
okay. So I love this because the last five episodes of this podcast have been more of like informative, like talking with the guest and
We're
all
going off
that.
the rails here.
Justin, you might have to be like every other episode because I love this. So one of the highest obesity rates in the world is actually an island called Nauru.
Where's that?
It's in the Pacific Island. It's called, I think it's Nauru, Cook Islands. Let's see, Nauru. Because a lot of people say, oh, well, it's America, right? No, it's this tiny little island. Let me open the map. I like fact checking myself, so
Yeah.
I'm not
Well,
like,
I have a lot of thoughts too that I want to preface just in case anyone's listening and they're like, what complete idiots, whatever.
yeah,
I'm pretty okay. On one hand, you have to be careful with statistics because anyone can manipulate any set of data and statistical study to say almost anything. So I am aware of that. Anyways,
absolutely.
proceed.
Okay. So, and again, we're not trying to offend anyone. This is literally just like having a discussion. Again, so it's just east of Papua New Guinea. It's like kind of in between Papua New Guinea and Hawaii, essentially. So what happened, and you guys can go look this up, but it's really interesting. Like, this isn't like, oh my God, like, no, this is just, I'm interested in these things. It's a tiny island, and their crops, their soil, everything. I forgot what happened. We're going to do this fact check in real time. Declining phosphate prices, the high cost of maintenance. Wait, no, let's see. Yeah, by the late 1990s, the island was completely bankrupt. So they couldn't grow their own food. They were, desperate to sell their own. Let's see. There was just like a lot of, like, they essentially became so poor that they couldn't feed their own people naturally on the island. They were very restricted, their soil and all that stuff. So what they did was they imported very, very, very extremely cheap engineered GMO highly processed foods into their island so that they could feed their people, right? And all that, like, we're talking like bottom of the barrel. Like when you go into a Safeway or a Ralph's or whatever, and there's like those TV dinners that are like $1.99, and you look in the list of ingredients, it's just like all chemicals. Like there's probably asbestos in that shit. So for years they were eating this food because they were so cut off from normal civilization. They were small islands, so they're getting these imports of like the cheapest food you could find, highly processed, and within 20 30 years, whatever it was, it really became like 99% of the population that lived there was extremely obese. And the reason I bring up this story is because that food that's circulating around the world, and primarily the US, because a lot of stuff in Europe is actually banned, that's still legal in the US. But like, that's what cracks me up. Like a lot of people talking about, oh, the vaccine and this and that, but then they turn around and they're like eating Ritz crackers and TV dinners and all these things. And I'm like, I guarantee you those things are killing you more quicker than, whatever vaccine, whatever, blah, blah, blah. We won't get into that. But yeah, so the reason I bring up that story about that island is it's interesting. Like that's what highly processed fake food that is still circulating the US right now can do to your body.
And if you really want to take it, this would have to be a whole other podcast, but
yes,
like you said, a lot of these issues come from cutting costs. And so I empathize with anyone that's like, well, this, you could say that, but organic this and that, and Whole Foods is like expensive. And so then I think you're right. And so the bigger problem is it's a very larger problem that just has to do with the entire system and like money itself. And I mean, even that's like cutting costs everywhere sort of like ruins the whole world. Like from like everything just being cheaper, like buildings being built cheaper, products being built cheaper, and how they say like, oh, they don't make them like they used to, like a jacket that used to just last you 100 years if you just bought it once, versus now like everything's fast fashion and
Mhm.
food is cheap. And yeah, like I'm 100% with you. It's a deeper it's a deeper issue, and it's a larger issue, but it is an issue. And
Definitely.
on the point about meat, the way I think it's just a difference in like personal philosophy of the way you see life. If like I've listened to a lot of like vegan podcasts, like there's this one guy on YouTube, and based on his worldview, he's right, like about reducing suffering and least suffering. But then if you look at it in a different worldview, you know, um, especially I don't want to say anything about Buddhism because I don't know too much about it. I just know that it has to do with like life is suffering. But like if perhaps someone who chooses to eat meat doesn't look at it as like my purpose in life is to reduce animal suffering as much as possible. Perhaps the way I see it is, okay, this is just where I fall within a natural system. You know, I'm not trying to cause animal suffering, but I also think that I haven't actually articulated these thoughts, but this is the natural way. And
Yeah.
perhaps,
It's like
perhaps if
biology.
right, perhaps if I don't do this, I will cause human suffering in some longer term aspect. Like, and I think there probably still is a lot wrong with the actual like industrial system of like how animals are made. So maybe the best solution would be like have your own chickens and something like that.
That's the key, is getting back to that idea. Like my parents buy a cow every year and it lasts them over a year.
Right, something like that. So I'm not saying that like just because you eat meat that the entire I don't know if it's called agriculture, what's it called for meat? And the entire industry is good.
Right.
But I do think that you have to just it's just about another way that you might look at life. Like I don't think there's anything wrong with looking at yourself as part of this system, and like every other animal eats like each other. And if you just look at it as like, okay, there's a higher greater thing and we're just part of this, then I do think that someone should be able to not be like, you eat meat, you're a horrible person, because
Right.
it actually makes complete sense depending on the way you look at life in general. But anyways,
Well, that plays into the whole overarching theme of like why people, especially now in today's political landscape. I mean, a lot of it's driven by the corporate media, for views and clicks and division. Um, but I think the beautiful thing about America and the United States is like everyone's entitled to their own opinion. Everyone can have this freedom of thought and free speech and all that. But what I don't like from both sides, the left and the right, is like this shunning of the other person because they believe a certain way. It's like if somebody walked into my house and said, "Hey, like I appreciate you having me over. I know you're making burgers tonight, but I'm fully vegan. Is there any way that you can make an alternative?" You know what we would do? You and Justin and I would be like, absolutely,
yeah.
absolutely. Like
Well,
like no worries at all. Like,
I don't,
but
yeah, I don't personally need you to do what I do, but I will say
yeah,
like a lot of people, and I used to think like this too. And what you're saying about the ingredient list, like a lot of people will think like, oh, vegan is healthy and vegan is marketed as healthy. When if you look at like these Beyond Burgers and Impossible Burgers, like just go look at what's in them. And
they're more processed than like a
if you
Ritz
want to be
cracker.
vegan, like fine, eat a potato, eat apple.
Yeah.
But like I I also personally think like we should be wary of like all these weird milks and weird meats that aren't milk and meat. Like if you don't want to eat milk or meat, don't eat milk or meat. But I don't know about this Beyond Burger. Like, look at the ingredients.
So I'm gonna pull up a
And the other thing that you were saying, like about the seed oil thing or whatever, I also look at it like, okay, maybe some people will say it's a naturalistic fallacy, but like, when are you ever going to get that much sunflower seed oil if you were to just like harvest sunflower seeds? And if you look at the way they're made, okay, here's my ultimate argument. If you look at the way something like butter or olive oil is made, okay, maybe olive oil is even more complicated, but olive oil, you simply crush olives.
yeah.
That's it. You squeeze olives. And if you look at butter, you simply shake milk until it
Yeah.
turns into butter.
Yeah.
But if you look at how canola oil and vegetable oil is made, I mean, there's the word expeller pressed canola. Just the word expeller pressed should say something, but like first they like bleach it, then they spin it through a like I forgot the word, like the super fast spin
Oh yeah.
hydro whatever, and
Then
then
they put
they
asbestos in it.
no,
I'm
and
kidding.
then they expel it through an press it through an expeller, and then they like heat it and sanitize it and strain it. Like maybe you can say it's falling for like the naturalistic fallacy, but I mean it makes sense to me. I don't know.
Yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely. And this app actually, for those of you that are listening,
And that's your
still,
video editing tip of the
yeah, that's your video editing tip of the day. I want everyone to really go download this app. It's called Yuka. Let me make sure.
I mean, a lot of things I
Yuka.
think could just be solved by common sense.
Totally. Totally. So
Like
with Yuka, so the milk industry pumped millions, probably billions of dollars into marketing when we were in college or when we were in school. Remember the milk mustache and
mhm.
all that. It's just a big psyop. So now that we're having alternatives, it's hilarious because you bring up Beyond Meat. Like when you think of Beyond Meat, it's like, oh, we're not killing animals and it's super healthy, when really it's more processed than like processed meat. Same thing with oat milk. So Oatly, which is probably one of the most well-known, most famous um, oat milk or milk alternatives. I scanned it and it was a 48 out of 100. It has 5 additives that are harmful to the human body. So this is a perfect example, and again,
What's
of
that app? I haven't heard of it.
Yuka. It's spelled
YUCA.
Yuka, and you scan the
Okay.
barcode on any food product and it'll bring up a rating out of 100. So
Based on like some filters that it has like this red 40 or this ingredient is in it or whatnot.
exactly. So there's positives, like the positive of oat milk, of Oatly oat milk is, it's high in protein, high in fiber, it's got low calories, low sugar content, blah, blah, blah. But what gives it that 48 out of 100, that F rating, is that there's literally 5 hazardous additives. One of them, dipotassium phosphate. Why is dipotassium phosphate in an oat milk?
Maybe that's just like the scientific word for like salt or something. No, I know that's not salt, but you know what I mean. Some people I see make those arguments like that's just that's just simply salt, or
Yeah.
something like that.
Phosphates containing phosphorus. Excess phosphorus may increase the risk of cardiovascular disease, disrupt calcium metabolism and bone mineralization, and negatively affect the kidneys. So most people will say, "Oh, well, everything in moderation." It's not like I'm sorry, but like if you're drinking a milk alternative every day for 20 years, that's slowly gonna, a little bit goes a long way. It's kind of like, heart disease, and like the leading cause of death in the United States is heart disease. And inflammation is a big thing too. It's kind of like when you talk about anxiety or depression or things like that before, depending on who the doctor is, if they're not pill pushers, before they
Yes, we are
hopefully,
not doctors. This
yeah,
is
we are
not
not
legal
doctors.
advice.
Exactly. It's kind of like financial trading. Like, this is not financial advice. And then they go bankrupt. But hopefully a good doctor will look at alternatives before throwing a pill at you, where they're like, okay, well, what's your diet? Are you exercising? Are you
I
staring?
don't think they do.
No, they don't. Absolutely not.
And honestly, I'm with you for like most everything that you're saying. Um, yeah, and I don't want to act like, I mean, all these are like really large issues, and not like I know the answer to everything, or like I don't know. But yeah, I just think common sense. Like
Totally. Hey, on
if
that
it's
note, how
something,
was
yeah.
event?
No, if it's something, yeah. Well, oh, I wanted to say this too. Like when they're like, when it'll be like a candy and it'll be like fat free. It's like, well, of course there's no fat in it. It's a sugar candy, you know. But
Yeah.
they make it seem like it's healthy. Like and like maybe for you and I, we know, but like then it takes advantage of people too because like my mom will be like, but this one says fat free, and you know she's like she's trying to be healthy, but like she doesn't know like that this corporation is saying fat free, but that like you know English is not even her first language. So like I'm not saying my mom's really smart and you know she's a great lady, but I'm just saying like she's older. She doesn't know that like you can't trust like everything on the shelf and that this company is just going to straight up lie to you and say fat free when that has nothing to do with anything. And then there's like juices that will say like 50% less sugar, but that's just because they cut it in half with more water.
Yeah.
So it's like,
And those things aren't regulated by the FDA either. Like the term all
oh yeah, the
natural,
term
they're not,
natural,
yeah,
yeah,
natural isn't regulated. So if you go buy, some turkey meat that's sliced and it says all natural farm raised, those terms aren't regulated.
yeah,
It's not,
they could mean anything.
it could mean anything. Like you could literally, like Taco Bell could sell a Doritos Loco taco that says all natural.
Natural Doritos.
And people would be like, "Oh my god, finally a healthy
Yeah,
Taco Bell." It's just like, no, it has the
yeah,
same shit. It's because it's not regulated. And a lot of these things that are heavily regulated in Europe and other countries aren't regulated here. Obviously, we live in a heavily capitalistic society where it's like free and fair market. If you want to make a shit ton of money by slowly killing people, it's America. You can do that. Um,
yeah.
I mean, if I was in charge, I would make anyone that has like that red hazardous additive automatic. You have to do a skull and crossbones sticker on the
Like
front of the
cigarettes.
product. Yeah, exactly. Like when
Yeah,
you open a can of chew, it says, "Hey, before you throw in this fat lip, um, you're probably going to die of mouth cancer." And
yeah.
people are still obviously going to do it. I mean, people that are addicted, they see that and it's just like, whatever, like, fuck off. But like, still with foods, it's like, there's also this moral thing. Like if you're, but again, then it circles back to classism. Poor people
Right.
can't afford
Well,
organic
it's
things.
a bigger issue with the whole system, but I think at the very least, like with education, you can, I mean, people should at least have the right to be informed and educated. Then if they want to make, because a lot of people think they're making good decisions when they're just sort of like, oh, this Beyond Burger is healthy, and I'm not okay. Don't take my word for it, but like,
Stop eating beyond.
no, don't. They're gonna sue you.
I know, seriously.
But like yes, I understand like, some especially with the inflation and everything going on right now, like and it's like trending that eggs are so expensive now. But I mean, you should at least have some basic education and going back to like the school system, like with what we're taught, like, hey, like try to eat foods that are real or like that you can understand the ingredients of, or like whole foods or foods that like were around, when your great grandparents were around or something like that, and like you said, no one's gonna be perfect, a little bit of moderation, but I don't think it's classist to try to be informed. And then I agree though that it's a lot. It's not necessarily. I'm not blaming an individual. It's a larger issue on why you go to a grocery store and 90% of it's just junk or corn. It's so funny. There's this picture on Twitter, and it's like a pantry full of different snacks, and it's like what blows my mind is that this is all just like different variations of corn,
Yeah, corn
and it's
syrup.
true.
It's so true. It is so true. And
But
especially,
yeah, it all comes down to like cutting costs and all this stuff. I don't know. Society in some ways is broken, but
well, my girlfriend and I were at the
as it has
park.
always been.
Oh, it always goes back hundreds of thousands of years. But my girlfriend and I were at the park walking our dog, and there was these two kids driving their RC cars, and it had rained a lot. It's been raining a lot in LA lately, and there was these kids racing the RC cars on the dirt, and dogs were chasing it. And it was the cutest thing ever. It was hilarious. But then the guy came out, it was a city park. And he comes out and he goes, "Hey, I don't mean to be that guy, but I'm going to ask you guys to stop and come back on a day where it's not so muddy, because what you're doing is the dogs are running full force following this RC car, and it's cutting up and digging up all the grass, and in the morning it's going to be destroyed. And this is a park that kids come play baseball at, and there's games here, blah blah blah." And the final reason that he said to not do that is he says, "We don't have a budget for lawn care or whatever. Like we can't, like we don't have unlimited money to fix this. Like the only reason I'm saying to stop is because like we don't get money. We can't afford this." So when I heard that, it's just like, it's the same thing with like schools where people say, "Oh my God, when you go to a school and look at the lunches that they're serving, it's like god awful. It's horrible. It's not real food." It's like the similar kind of story where it's like state funded, it's public school system. They're like, we can't afford to have like nice quality chicken and all that stuff. So you're exactly right. At the very tip of the Illuminati pyramid is like this
Money. It
yeah,
all goes
money.
back to money.
It
And
all
I don't
goes
know the
back to
answer,
money.
but I don't know
Exactly.
the answer, but as far as I suspect, that's at least one of, like, if you go deeper and deeper to the root, that's definitely up there somewhere. Maybe you can go even more deep, but it's definitely there somewhere. Is some sort of thing with, and maybe this is all propaganda that I've been seeing, but you see those images of like, look at this ancient Roman cobblestone road. It's like lasted 10,000 years or something.
Yeah.
I know that doesn't make any sense like in time, but and then
Well,
it's
it's
like,
like your
look,
analogy is like potholes.
right, or
Yeah.
like I think they even just found out like that back in some time period they used to mineralize the bricks in some special way that would strengthen them, and they just realized that they were doing this. But anyways, yeah, it goes back to like, look at these castles and things that they used to build that last thousands of years, and now it's just like budget, like just throw down this hot asphalt and it'll last about 3 years, but that's fine. Just like next year we'll just patch it up a little bit, and it's cheap and easy. So in my personal view of things, and as far as I've educated myself about, or maybe propagandized myself into believing, I do believe
Psyop.
that yeah, I do believe that there's that when you go higher up the route, it has something to do with that. So if there's any bright young minds out there, maybe that can be where you work on a solution.
Absolutely. Well, I think that, we should maybe this has uncovered this need to have these discussions and go further. Maybe we can do this like once a month or something where we can just like discuss these
Conspiracy
systems. And
hour with Justin.
I know, and the funny thing is like we've gotten into this time where that term conspiracy theory is being thrown around a lot. And it's almost used to discredit what might actually be true. Obviously, I view it as a spectrum, right? You have people on the far other side of the spectrum where it's like, that is a conspiracy theory. That is crazy. That is like that's common sense. That's not true. And then you have other, like the complete opposite of the spectrum where it's like all the food stuff that we're talking about, where the FDA doesn't regulate the term all natural. Like that's not a conspiracy theory. That's true. And it's kind of like the island. Like that's not a conspiracy theory. 99% of their population is obese now because they were so poor that they had to import highly processed foods. And now those poor people are dealing with heart related issues and all these consequences of obesity. So I view it as a spectrum, right? It's like, where does this exist on that spectrum? And you can go deeper and deeper down the rabbit hole, and eventually you're in QAnon territory. But it's like, I still believe that like, these conversations should be had because like we're on that thin, like we're in the beginning of the spectrum where it's like, no, yeah, these things are, like you mentioned the Beyond Meat. Like that's not a conspiracy. Like you can go on and look at the back of a packaging of a Beyond Burger and tell me if you personally understand half or more of what's in that ingredient list. It's kind of like when you go on a Southwest Airlines flight and they give you those peanuts. It should be
Peanuts,
peanuts
salt.
and salt. And literally on the back of that thing is like, hydrogenated phosphate fuel and red 75
And it's best.
and asbestos and ethanol fuel and gunpowder and you're sitting there like, wow, like I have a higher chance of dying from eating this Southwest Airlines peanut than dying in a airplane crash. Like,
You're classist, Evan.
I know I'm a classist piece of shit. I can't wait for people to dox me and show up
I
outside
I
my
want to
house.
see. Actually, I'm really interested. Like, if anyone listened to this, I bet you have a comment, and I want to see the comments. And like, not like I want to just see what sort of thoughts we've sparked, or like opinions from the other side, or yeah, I feel like this could have some good comments because we haven't been afraid to be polarizing.
Totally. Yeah. And it's not like I said earlier, it's not like we're out here on some Kanye shit where we're doing this for views and we're like Satan and cabal and oh my God, you're gonna die tomorrow. Like it's none of that. We're not fear baiting. We're not trying to give you anxiety. We're trying to spark a conversation that should be had where it's like, oh wow, I never really thought of that. Like I've gone, maybe some girl is watching this and she's like, oh my God, mom, I watched this podcast and like all that all natural turkey breast that I've been eating is actually not all natural because I learned that the FDA doesn't regulate that. Like these are things that like are, they're not half truths. They're not conspiracy. Like these are like
Yeah.
just food for thought,
And if you want video editing tips, then you can just go to my channel. I already did all
Yeah,
that.
exactly. I'm honestly glad that we kind of had this conversation because like sometimes I have the fear of having like a very like robotic conversation with
Yeah.
people. And I'm sure you have your own podcast, you have your own channel, and I'm sure you kind of run into that same fear where it's like you're hitting topics and then you're like,
Mhm.
well, thank you for joining. Like
Yeah.
I'm glad that this conversation opened up because it's just like I'm more of like allowing things to flow and do that. So I appreciate you taking the time and and chatting. So hopefully, we can find that middle ground where we're not too afraid to talk about these things, but we're also not like fully diving into some QAnon shit and then selling Alex Jones pills at the end where it's like, hey, if you guys don't want all natural turkey breast, hop on the Still Human store. I actually have turkey meat enhancement pills that you have to take twice. Like we're not doing that.
Still human utopia
Yeah,
cult.
exactly. Yeah, if you don't want to die from starvation in 2 days, hop onto Still Human and buy every product that's on there.
The cult is it's giving the cult aesthetic, but in like a good way.
That's what it all comes down to. Remember like 30 minutes ago, I said, I want to take what the Kabbalist elite powerful people at the top are doing to manipulate people, use those same tactics, but for the good. Like
Yeah.
you should, don't, like you do you like be a human, be inspired and indoctrinate yourself with good ideas. And
If we know
look,
what good is.
I know, seriously, like who's that? What, who are we to
Actually,
say that we know what's good for people?
I know we're running over, but there was a really interesting idea that okay, I'm gonna take it back to chess one last time because I'm an addict. But
Oh, I love it.
there's this idea of the relationship between beauty and truth. And
Mm,
this sounds crazy, but sometimes in chess, like you'll play a certain move and you'll be like, well, why did you do that? And you're like, well, this one was like the most beautiful. Like this one appealed to me the most.
mm.
And sometimes it's like the best move. And so there's this really I found like there's like this really fascinating relationship between what we find beautiful and what is true. And and that's based on like beautiful painting or beautiful this could really get into like another conversation, but I just found that idea so interesting that like sometimes if we don't know the right answer, we can look at what we as humans are attracted to. Maybe that's
What
wrong, but
feels right? What feels
yes,
right?
maybe
It's kind
that's
of like
wrong,
that
but
innate, like
in
trust your
chess, it's
gut,
right.
like trust your gut in a way, or like go to what you feel is right. Yeah.
Yeah,
No, I like that.
it's right at least in the context of chess. So don't come for me.
Well, maybe in the next time we converse, we can talk more about chess because I don't have a single clue about it, but I think that it's interesting. Like it's been around for like when was let's see before we
For a
go,
long time, like
when
2000
was
years or something.
chess invented?
No, that's a whole
Chess
nother.
chess first appeared in India about 6th century SE. Wow. See, like you're literally playing a game that's been around for like thousands of years. That's incredible. And it hasn't changed, has it?
No, it has changed a
Oh,
lot.
it has. Okay. See, I
Um,
don't know anything about it and I want to learn more, damn it. So, okay, well, that was an amazing episode. Thank you so much, Justin, for hopping on and if you're game for it, maybe we can do this once a month, have some conversations and see how long it takes for us to get canceled.
no, yeah, I'm always down to collaborate more. But yeah, thanks for having me on. That was definitely an interesting conversation. I think the reason we got into all these topics is because we're both of us are interested about education, and that's kind of what I think that I do is, I mean, I'm sort of in the education section. That's my industry sort of, and so I mean, that does go into almost all these topics we're talking about. So I don't think that we just went off the rails completely. I
Totally.
think that this has to do with what I do. But yeah, but for anyone out there who's made it to the end, thanks for listening. And if you want more uh, formal education on, things like Photoshop, Premiere, After Effects, graphic and photo and video editing, yeah, you could check me out, justinodisho.com, or just check my YouTube channel, or just reach out to me if you're interested in that. But we definitely had a rare conversation here.
Well, Justin, you're a wizard and I appreciate you and I'm stoked to do more of these, but thank you so much.